Good to know.
Good evening. It is 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. And this is the regular meeting of the Sandpoint City Council. I now call to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Mayor Shelby Ronstadt presiding. Also present are council members Shannon Sherman, Deb Rule, Joel Aspiro, Kate McAllister, and Andy Grote. Councilman John Darling is absent this evening. We'll now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we proceed with our agenda this evening, I'd like to announce that amendments to the agenda were proposed and posted yesterday. Because the amendments were proposed after the agenda was originally posted and less than 48 hours prior to the meeting, the amended agenda cannot become effective without a motion and vote of council. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the amendments to the agenda with the addition of item 7G, appointment to Urban Renewal Board, and the typographical corrections under item 9B, fiscal year 2022 budget. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Aspiro,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilman Grote.
Yes.
Motion passes. Are there any announcements from council?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I would. So it's not really an announcement. It's more of a heartfelt thank you to all of our volunteers over the past few weeks. And since probably the 4th of July, we've had a lot of different events going on. And those events would not be successful if it wasn't for the organizers, as well as the volunteers that show up to those events. And they are the actual, the bedrock of our community. And I just wanted them to all know that they are seen, they're appreciated, and we all thank them very much, and we'll see them all at the next one because we need their help.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate that. Any other council announcements? All right. Any announcements from staff?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, a couple of announcements. Our main City Hall building is under construction where our restrooms are. For any of the public that are in the meeting tonight, if you need to use a restroom, if you grab a staff member in the back, they can get you to either a handicap restroom, regular restroom up on the 2nd floor, but we've got to walk through the construction area, so they'll have to unlock it. But restrooms are open tonight. And then also, I wanted to recognize Chief Kuhn. He's 24 years with the city today, so it's his city birthday today.
Congratulations, Chief.
You'll be hearing a little bit more from him tonight on some of the agenda items.
All right. Is that it from staff?
Yes.
Okay. The first item on this evening's agenda is the appointment of our new fire chief. City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton will make the introduction and provide information on the hiring and appointment process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my function as Executive Director working with our Joint Powers Authority Board, and Councilwoman McAllister is a Sandpoint representative on the Joint Powers Board. I'm making the recommendation in conjunction with the JPA Board for the appointment of Gavin Gilcrease as the new fire chief for our shared Selkirk Fire Services and EMS group under our JPA. We had over 20 highly qualified candidates from actually all over the country that applied for our chief position. And we were so fortunate with the group of candidates that our cutoff to even interview was they had to meet our preferred qualifications, meet or exceed our preferred qualifications. Even from that, we were able to remove some of the candidates that weren't the best fit to get the most highly qualified candidates. Gavin was one of the 4 candidates that we interviewed, There was a chiefs panel that did the first round of intensive unit interviews, and Chief Pat Riley from Northern Lakes Fire District, who's here with us tonight, participated in that interview, as well as Brian Schaefer from the Spokane Police Department. Gavin was unanimously with the two chiefs, the recommendation of the right hire, strong recommendation of moving forward with him as a candidate, the candidate, heads and shoulder really above the rest in our process. We followed up the next day with a second interview, which was all of the members of the JPA board, our interim chief, Dale Hopkins, myself, and our HR director, Nicole Goes, participating as well. And we had an interesting debate because it was a Zoom interview that we did, and everyone who is in Councilwoman McAllister remembers this quite well. Everyone who was there, I said, you know, we've done hiring different ways in these times at the city. Sometimes we interview somebody electronically and it's so clear there's such a good engagement and we know it's a fit, we hire them from that. Other times we decide we want to have them come out here to determine whether it's a fit. And so there's two ways of doing it. And so we can do either way. We'll just get through this interview. And I would think across the board, actually, what I heard back from the table was we're absolutely not going to hire somebody off of a Zoom interview. They're going to have to come out here. We got 15 minutes into the interview and it was very clear we were hiring this candidate off of the Zoom interview, and that's what happened as a result of that. So all of the members of the hiring process were incredibly impressed with Gavin's qualifications. He comes to us from the currently St. John's Fire District on Johns Island, South Carolina, just outside of Charleston, where he is the assistant fire chief and manages the administrative division for the fire district, which employs 140 FTEs at 7 fire stations and a $14.5 million operating budget. He has over 20 years experience in fire operations, training, fire inspections, investigations, and maintenance divisions with multiple career highlights and a lot of accolades. So the recommendation unanimous from the JPA board and staff that were involved in the hiring process is the appointment of Gavin Gilcrease as our next chief. With that, he is transitioning from South Carolina and is up here with his wife, Linda. Yes, he came in yesterday. He's here for the next couple of days, getting acquainted with our current interim chief, and we are sending him back with a computer access to all of our systems. So the transition between the chiefs could continue to occur until he can get back before the end of August and fully take the reins in person full time. And we'll be working through transition in between time, and he'll be continuing to work with us until he comes back, which is kind of a common theme with transitioning employees in this day and age. So Gavin Gilcrease, and if Gavin wants to come up and say anything, but we unanimously recommend to council the appointment of Gavin.
Okay. Gavin, would you care to come up and say a few words? You're not obligated to, but I want to give you the opportunity. You look so nice back there.
Right.
You dressed for the occasion.
How's everybody doing this evening?
Good, sir.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to the whole team for throughout the interview process today, just coming in and being able to meet everybody. I'm truly honored to be able to be here and to take the reins as a new fire chief. Met a couple of the guys on shift today. It's just going to be a very exciting time, and I just want to thank you again, and look forward to getting back up here before the end of August to make that happen. Thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, please.
The interview process was incredible. We went off some of script because I wanted to know, I'm all about leadership. And so I was so impressed. It was so incredible. It was your sincerity, your experience. It was a pleasure to interview you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
Does council have any questions? Okay. Chief Riley is here. If you'd like to say a few words, we'd welcome you to do that right now. And from Northern Lakes, is that right?
Mayor and council members, Pat Riley, the fire chief for the Northern Lakes Fire Protection District. We serve Hayden and Rathdrum. I was humbled to be asked and requested to be sitting on the panel with Chief Schaefer from the Spokane Fire Department. I was also honored to serve in that capacity. I did not take it lightly, and nor did he. I'm also the director for the Idaho State Fire Chiefs Association. And so on behalf of the State Fire Chiefs Association, granted, this is Bonner County, but the North Idaho Fire Chiefs Association and the Kootenai County Fire Chiefs Association, we truly and sincerely look forward to working with Chief Gavin. It was an exceptional pick, and I agree, even in a Zoom interview, council member, I've never had one like that before, and it was the right fit. I agree with staff's recommendation wholeheartedly, or I wouldn't have made it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your service and for being here this evening. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Madam Clerk, anyone online?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to appoint Gavin Gilcrease as Fire Chief of the City of Sandpoint and Selkirk Fire Rescue and EMS Services pursuant to the Joint Powers Agreement for the coordinated and cooperative provision of fire services in the City of Sandpoint, Saco Fire District, and Westside Fire District. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilman Grote,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilman Sprow,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule.
Yes.
Congratulations, Chief Gavin. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And I also want to say thank you to Chief Hopkins for your continued service over the years with the City of Sandpoint, and really appreciate you sticking around to make sure that Chief Gavin gets all the introductions and training that he needs to get onboarded. And it has been a pleasure working with you over the years as well. So we really appreciate your service. We'll now proceed with the public forum portion of the meeting, which allows the public to address myself and City Council regarding items on the consent calendar or on any topic not listed on the agenda. This is not the time to speak on specific items listed on the agenda. If you would like to speak on such an item, please wait until that item is announced during the regular meeting. To accommodate those who wish to speak on general terms during public forum, as well as those who wish to speak on specific business items on our agenda, a total of 20 minutes will be dedicated to the public forum at the beginning of the meeting. If you'd like to speak and did not have an opportunity to do so, we'll give everyone an opportunity to speak by reopening the public forum at the end of our regular agenda. Before we proceed with the public forum at this time, I'd like to take just a moment to recite the rules and procedure for public comment during Sandpoint City Council meetings, both during public forum and during other opportunities for public comment during the meeting. Please note, if you're participating by Zoom, you'll need a working microphone in order to participate, and you'll need to use the raise your hand option if you'd like to be called upon to speak. When your name is called, you'll see a prompt on your screen to unmute. You'll need to press or click the unmute button in order to be heard. For those participating here in person, if you wish to speak, you'll need to complete a sign-up form that's located at the front of the room and hand it to the city clerk who's before us here. The forms are available on the table by the door. As I mentioned, in the interest of time, please do not repeat prior comments, but simply state your support of those comments. Comments shall not be personally derogatory, nor shall they be personally directed at any individual, organization, or business. Public comment opportunities during meetings are for comments only. Please do not direct any questions to the mayor or city council or staff during your comments, and do not approach the dais. If you have any materials for council, please hand them to the city clerk at the front of the room. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes, which will be counted down using our timer. Okay, so do we have the, oh, here it is. Look what I have for you. Very exciting. I don't think we'll need this tonight, but just in case, this is a warning. So each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes, which will be counted down using our timer stoplight. The green light will indicate 1 minute remaining. The yellow light indicates 30 seconds remaining. And when the light turns red, your time has expired. Is there anyone who would like to speak during the public forum portion of the meeting?
Mr. Mayor, I am not aware of anyone who wishes to speak during public forum.
Okay, that concludes the public forum portion of the meeting. We'll now proceed with the consent calendar. For the record, the total amount of bills is $1,237,699.67, reflecting $585,731.91 for regular payables and $651,967.76 for payroll. Are there any items council wishes to remove from the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to remove item number 7F, the proposed resolution for the city of Sandpoint and the festival at Sandpoint, and make a motion that we move it into the old business category so that it can be voted on separately from the consent calendar, just for transparency's sake, in case any council members have anything or questions about that item.
Okay, that does not require a vote, so we'll just move that into the first item under old business.
Okay, thank you.
I will entertain a motion to approve the amended consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilman Espero,
Yes.
Councilman Groot.
Yes.
Motion passes, and I want to thank Linda Heiss once again for pulling in all the big bucks with her continued diligent work in the grant arena. First item under old business now is a proposed resolution for the 2021 lease between the city of Sandpoint and the festival at Sandpoint, the LEASE. City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton will provide a brief presentation for us.
Excuse
Present.
me, Mr. Mayor, did we approve the consent calendar or we just approved the motion to move?
No, we approved the consent calendar.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I was not clear,
Do-
sorry.
Do you want to provide some, or do you have specific questions that you need answered? Maybe we can help Jennifer out with some specific questions.
Yeah, I did. It was just about the pesticides because I thought the field was now not grass. So I was confused about why we had a pesticides category on the new lease.
We left the pesticides.
I know, strange question, but
There was some debate. So in the past, this was an issue in the past related to pesticide use on the field. And we had discussion about that provision in the lease and decided to just leave it in there because it was a concern that I'm just going to move this to me, public in the past. And they do have some grassy areas that are part of the lease. For example, the area behind the grandstands is included, and that's where they're planning on moving the festival food court this year. So we decided to just leave it in there.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding the lease agreement?
Yeah, I have one, Mr. Mayor. Maybe Chief Kuhn would be the proper man to talk to about security for the festival.
You want just an overview?
Yeah, I guess there were some concerns earlier on about safety and that being brought up I'm assuming you overviewed the plan on,
No, absolutely. Do you prefer me back here or to walk up
I
front?
don't care.
Okay.
Is
he picked
up by the mic back there, Melissa?
I hear you fine, but
Can you hear me okay with the mic?
Mr. Mayor,
mind?
it'd be preferable if he was at the podium.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could come forward, Chief. Thanks.
we wanted to see the ties too. Good.
I put a tie on just for.
The fire chief had a tie on
Yeah.
earlier today. I thought to myself, well, you can't.
Yeah, we don't get to see this too often.
And I'm like, man.
Always competitive.
He still upstaged me.
He's from the South.
So I left my suit coat, so he still upstaged me. So that is a great question. So 2 years ago, if you guys wow, that's really loud. I won't yell. 2 years ago, when we had this debate, one of the concerns was that safety plan for not only those that attended the festival, but the community members on the outside of the venue and those that were coming and visiting. The past plan that we had was like 4 or 5 pages. Their safety and security plan was really lacking a lot of information. So we've worked hard over the last year. I think we're up to 30, 35 pages, give or take, of a security plan, which we addressed a lot of the concerns that I think the council had before of who's in charge of the security within that perimeter, This year, they're paying for professional staff to come in, which is nice. That staff is being trained and has been trained how to respond to a lot of the different situations. With the plan, we even went as far as like fire EMS response. You know, we've had an evacuation before for wind, and the past plan wasn't really adequate. And how do we get people out of there? So a couple of examples, like they're required to flag their exits now. And so we should see big signs above their exits that say, this is the exit. So if we have an emergency, nobody's running back to an exit that they came in when it's the worst one to use and there's one closer. So we looked at a lot of those things. So hopefully this new plan with our exits, the increased staffing, some of the stuff they're going to be doing, they're going to have video cameras, body cameras, some of those type of stuff to help hopefully control some of that inside of the crowd.
Right.
So I'm fairly confident with the inside. And then we go to the outside, which is the other concerns that we have. We know that there's been some rumors of people gathering, or we're not quite sure what to expect. So from the police department side is we're going to have a bike team. So we'll have 4 or 5 guys on bikes this year. They're going to be in charge of the exterior. We'll have 4 or 5 guys on foot that's going to be walking up and down Ontario. Just for that presence, we get a lot of concerns from the residents after the event that they leave, they're throwing garbage and they're doing other stuff in their yards and property. So we're going to have extra staff on standby for that event to be there. So I think we've hopefully we've dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's that we need to make it safe. So
You feel confident?
Yeah.
With the plan?
Yeah.
Appreciate that very much.
Yep. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, to clarify roles with this too, and because some in the public may not know, as part of our special events policy at the city, any of our permittees, or particularly for large events, our leases, they are required and may be required and are for large events to submit a security plan that has to be approved by the Chief of Police, Chief Kuhn. That doesn't mean that we are their security. That doesn't mean that we're in doing security for the leasee. They are 100% responsible for that. So within the confines of their area, they are responsible for security in the space that they are leasing. And as the chief mentioned, then there's been proper planning on our part for everything outside of the gate. There can be some interface if something is to happen inside a leased area, and just like a business where there may be a problem and the business owner, in this case the leasee, trespasses someone, and that becomes kind of the handoff with our police department. So there can be that interface, but in terms of overall public safety, our special events policy does require that we have a security plan that's submitted. The chief sign off on that, and there were about 4 or 5 iterations, I think, that we saw before you were comfortable with signing off.
Yeah, easily.
We
Any other
appreciate
questions?
that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I can attest to the security plan because the chamber, we have events and I'm required to put together like a 3 to 4 page security plan. So yeah, they're pretty strict about that.
Okay, everybody's good? Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Jennifer. I would entertain a motion to approve the 2021 lease agreement between the City of Sandpoint and the Festival at Sandpoint. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Grote,
Yes.
Councilman Espero,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule.
Yes.
Motion passes. In accordance with the City Council Strategic Priorities 2018 to 2020, the city has now completed a 2021 Sewer Collection System Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP, as we call it, ready for council's consideration. This plan is intended to inform the upcoming rate study and assist in prioritizing future improvement projects. City Engineer Dan Taddick will provide a presentation for us. Thanks, Dan.
Good evening. Staff is recommending a council approval this evening of the 2021 Sewer Collection System Capital Improvement Plan. I'm sure you've all noticed that this is not a robust master plan like was recently completed for water system, but rather this is a very high look at our sewer collection system, primarily intended to aid the upcoming rate study. This looks at gravity sewer rehabilitation replacement, manhole rehabilitation replacement, lift stations, controls and pumps replacement, as well as isolated point repairs within the system and force mains. Really holistic look at our collection system. This plan also includes estimated costs for anticipated growth. So that's both within city limits and in the ACI, strictly with the improvements within city limits. We're not looking beyond city limits with this plan currently. It's anticipated that this plan will be updated pending the results of future hydraulic modeling, very detailed hydraulic modeling and assessment, which is in the preliminary budget for next year. In total, this plan results in about $40 million on the high end for sewer system improvements over the next 20 years. And the plan also prioritizes those based on 5-year, 5 to 10, and 10 to 20-year increments. So we can look at needs by year to assist with that rate development. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
Does council have any questions?
Just more of an observation. So as we were looking at those maps, and obviously as city of Sandpoint grew, there was a different type of pipes that were being used, but there's so much concrete and clay in, I'd say maybe the more mature parts of Sandpoint. That's going to be removing that clay and those concretes or replacing that is a principal idea of what we're going through, correct?
Yeah, that was a big part of the gravity portion, pipeline rehabilitation and replacement. That's what we've been focused on with our cured in place pipe repairs over the past 10 years or so. Has been making lots of progress with that clay pipe, putting a structural liner in that pipe, coming back and cutting out the individual service lines. Should be a very long lasting product. And we've included estimates for both that type of replacement as well as some accounting for open trenching, because there may be situations where collapsed main or something like that where you can't line it.
Thank you.
So.
Okay. Any other questions, council? All right. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this matter?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution adopting the 2021 Sewer Collection System Capital Improvement Plan. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Grote,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilman Espero.
Yes.
Motion passes. The first item under new business this evening is a request from Bonner County for avigation easements for 3 parcels located within the airport approach airspace. 2 parcels owned by the city of Sandpoint and 1 city right-of-way. Airport Manager Dave Shuck is here to provide an overview of the county's request and answer any questions. Mr. Shuck?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you. The purpose of the acquisitions that we've been doing over the last several years around the airport is to enhance public safety around the airport. As you know, the city has grown around the airport, and the airport is geographically constrained on all sides. And there are requirements by the FAA for approach surfaces to both ends of the runway to allow airplanes to take off and land. And there are encroachments into those approach paths, such as trees, and in some cases, activities. We don't have any buildings per se. On the south end, we have the railroad, which would be tough to reroute, be expensive, but that's considered a geographical constraint there. In this case, we've got a portion of city property that lies under the RPZ, that is the runway protection zone. The runway protection zone is not to protect the runway, it's to protect the public from what can happen on the ends of the runway. The acquisitions for easements, both avigation and surface easements, are all for the protection of the public in the event that something untoward happens on the airport. There are 3 areas, as you can see on the exhibit above, that we're looking at, and there are 2 types of easements on 2 of the areas and 1 on the, let's see, it's the number 53.
So if we start with lot 30, or number 30, that is affected by the RPZ easement, which is an easement that goes down to the ground. And there's a restriction there about public gatherings. And it's all right to use the area, but we don't want to have, for instance, a pavilion set up where there would be people gathered in that area. And you can see that depicted on the exhibit there, inside the dotted RPZ line. Outside that line, over that parcel, would just be an avigation easement, which slopes up and away from the runway area. In that particular parcel, the avigation easement is closest to the ground on the southwest corner, and it's about 70 feet above the ground at that point, and it goes up to about 95 feet above the ground. And the purpose of the avigation easement is for the airport to be able to manage that airspace above that. So it's essentially a ceiling. And we want to be able to not allow cell towers, buildings, trees, things like that to grow up into that space that a pilot would expect to be clear, much like a freeway lane coming into land. The RPZ area is more restrictive because of the potential for runway overruns in an accident scenario. And we don't want to have places of public gathering there, like I say, a pavilion or a bandstand or an amphitheater, things like that. Park benches would be fine. People passing through that area is fine. Normally in RPZ situations, the airport prefers to own all of the property and restrict it entirely. We have a huge challenge here because of Boyer Road. We did look at, in our master plan some years ago in 2015, rerouting Boyer Road around the RPZ, which happens quite often on airports. But here it's pretty problematic from a standpoint of the geography that we're dealing with there and the creek and the wetlands there. So in this case, the best solution is simply to have the RPZ easement there, which controls what happens down to the ground level. And any questions on that parcel? Okay. On parcel number 56, which has been called the remainder, I believe, the purple triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very small portion. It does have a section of the RPZ easement, which would be down to ground level. And the other side of that, the westerly end of that would just be the avigation easement. Very little effect on that property because it's where it's situated. And again, the geography there, it doesn't lend itself to any other use really. That's why the value is so low on that. The avigation easements and the RPZ easement really don't change the value of that property much at all. The largest one is number 53, where we're actually going to have what's called a runway object-free area easement, and that goes down to within 3 inches of the ground. There should be nothing above 3 inches above the ground level in that area. And one of the reasons that we need that there is, or need to acquire that, or again, easement there, is because portion of the airport fence now lies inside that area. And the FAA would like that to be moved out and cleared. All along Boyer Avenue, down quite a ways south, there's a 5-foot wide easement that we're asking for along there as well, so that we can move that fence outside of the runway object-free area. The value of that easement is substantially higher because of the restrictions that it places. It essentially makes the property not usable for any other purpose. Any questions about any of that?
There's a, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, there's a concrete structure with the orange and white checkers painted on it. Where is that on this map? Is that included in this?
It is.
I'm going to assume that maybe it's in that red because it's next to the fence. You're very close to my neighborhood, so I'm paying attention to this.
Yeah, if you look at the green shaded area and just south of where it steps in to the narrow end, you can see a small dark dot alongside the road. That's that building.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, Mr. Shuck. Appreciate that presentation. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this matter? Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution for grant of avigation easements.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilman Sprow,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilman Grove,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Yes.
Motion passes. The next item under new business is the fiscal year 2022 budget. This evening, council will adopt the maximum preliminary budget. Consider approval of a resolution for intent to use foregone levying authority and schedule the budget public hearing. Adoption of the annual appropriation ordinance is planned for August 18th. City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton will provide a presentation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and if you can bear with me just a second, I'll get this pulled up. Gotta make sure I pull up the right thing. Here we go. Thank you, Melissa. As the mayor mentioned, what is before you tonight is we are requesting that the council adopt a preliminary budget, which establishes our maximum ceiling for expenditures. We anticipate a budget workshop to take place at your next council meeting on April 4th. And we are also in the process of completing our electronic budget book, similar to what was published last year, so that council will have the opportunity to review that, as well as the public far in advance of that August 4th council meeting. We will have the budget book posted on our website no later than Friday of this week, so that you have the opportunity to review that. The maximum budget being presented to council for adoption tonight is $40,597,593, which is an increase of almost $6 million or 17.33% over the fiscal year 2021 budget. The reason for the increase is a significant amount of that, approximately 1.4 million of the 5.4 million is as a result of the adoption of the new JPA and the transfer of the fire employees from both West Side and Sago Fire Districts over to the City of Sandpoint. And then all of the associated administrative and shared costs that will be borne by the fire systems. So council will recall that in accordance with the JPA, we essentially incur those expenses, and then we are billing the fire districts for those on a monthly basis for reimbursement of shared costs using an allocation methodology that was developed and was included in our JPA for the shared costs. For the actual employee costs, the firefighter costs outside of our administrative pools, so our fire chief, our assistant chief, and the secretary, the districts bear 100% of the costs for their employees that came over to Sandpoint. So that constitutes $1.4 million of the increase. In addition, in the past few months, the city has been awarded an American Rescue Plan Act ARPA grant. This is the latest round of COVID stimulus funding that was awarded at the federal level. And with us being the size of city that we are, the funds allocated to the city are passed through the state of Idaho. So we've received notice that this is the amount of the grant that will be awarded to City of Sandpoint. We've received part of that distribution already. And we will see 50% of that will receive the final amount about a year from now. We have included projects in the budget, which we will be presenting to you that are eligible under that funding, including stormwater projects, as well as facility improvements for public and employee safety. Council had already approved the customer service remodel here on the first floor. And you will see our expenses for City Hall improvements rolled from this current fiscal year into the next fiscal year. So it looks like, and we'll be having discussions that our costs perhaps are greater than what they are for projects planned next year. And that's because our project currently going on here in City Hall won't be completed until early November. So we've rolled carryover budget from this year to next year. The ARPA grant pays for things as part of our remodel, like plumbing improvements, our HVAC improvements that improve the air quality within the facility for the public and the employees, other hygienic improvements like touchless sinks, touchless paper towel holders, that kind of a thing throughout the City Hall. They also will support public safety improvements. And one of the projects we will be talking with you about in our budget discussions is a proposed remodel of our police department. And we anticipate the ARPA grant being a significant source of funding for that project. We hope to undertake later this fall. In addition, for stormwater projects, you will recall we had a large stormwater project planned as part of our War Memorial Field that would address stormwater, actually not down at the site of War Memorial, but up the stream at Dubs Field, or the 9th grade field over off of Highway 2. So we are planning that project, and being stormwater, it is an allowable expense under this grant. We also have slated stormwater engineering and planning for the Farmans Landing project downtown. What many people don't know, but council is very aware, is that essentially half of our downtown drains right down that Farmans Landing and pretty much up to the Cedar Street Bridge and into Sand Creek there. And it's long been a goal of city administrations, prior city council, including the current council and mayor, to get better treatment of that stormwater. So we have budgeted dollars to get moving forward with that project that we've been talking about for many years. We have budgeted carryover dollars, again, as I mentioned, for completion of the City Hall customer service. So that's accounted in that increase, which isn't new dollars, but it's carryover dollars from this budget year into next budget year. We have budgeted $525,000 for the next phase of the Great Northern Road project. Amanda has previously presented the preliminary designs for Great Northern Road. It would be this next fiscal year that we really start moving into vetting those designs further, getting into property acquisition, et cetera, in order to fully get that project underway. And that would be funded with SURA dollars. So that makes up, again, a portion of the $5.4 million. And then finally, we have $600,000 budgeted, and that is as a result of budget savings that we've had over the last few years to support an emergency repair project on North Boyer Road. We have a failure of a culvert, and we have had engineers taking a look at that project now for about the last month to determine how long we could wait and exactly what the fix is. But we've budgeted $600,000 in next year's budget, with budget savings, anticipating that we need to get that road repair done, or there's a possibility that we have the whole road slough off there. We've got significant drainage issues up there under North Boyer Road. I'll stop there in case council members have any questions on the increase at this point.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to get a clarification on the date of that workshop. I think I caught 2 months in there. Are you saying it's, the workshop is going to be August 4th?
Yes,
August 4th?
your
And then-
next council meeting.
And then where on North Boyer is that repair?
I'm going to ask Amanda to come up and talk a little bit about that.
I'm sure it's the creek, right? Not the- the
We're gonna
creek's
find out.
the line.
Just north of the county fairgrounds.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's as good of a description as I had, was north of the county fairgrounds, but she can hone in a little bit more and just what we're looking at.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great question. The location is, as stated, directly north of the fairgrounds. It's actually where the road comes down into the creek there. You can actually see it in the asphalt. There's a line down the northbound lane. The asphalt is at the end of its life. So last month, we actually had a geotech come out, take bore samples. They're analyzing the subgrade materials, and we are potentially looking at needing to reinforce that embankment that is going through a fairly saturated location. If for some reason the results of those bore samples come back and the issue is less than it appears to be on the surface, which it never seems to go that way, but if it does, then we'll certainly take a look at maybe what a longer term solution could be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question for you, Amanda, don't we? So is that not the defining city boundary where the creek is? And how does that work if are we going to be working closely with the county, or, I mean, sharing some of the cost if part of that is, I mean, have we had those
The
discussions?
risk of providing a joke that's not very funny, I did try to give it back to the county so that they, with, I have no authority to do so, but I did ask them if they could just take care of the problem. And no, it is fully within our city limits and it's fully our responsibility. Our coordination is especially with IHD
Okay.
because they're really the ones that maintain that next and utilize that next section. As everyone is aware, and which is why it's not funny, is because it's a very highly used road, especially in the winter. And so we're trying our very best to make sure that we're fully assessing the conditions at this time so that we're well prepared for the winter.
Great answer.
Yeah, I'd agree, but I think it's pretty highly used in the summer now. So Schweitzer's been having many, many festivals and lots more bikers and
Yes,
the busy road.
yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Any other
Amanda.
questions?
Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I just want to commend again, I mean, we went from 500,000 in grant revenue to $4.6 million next year. That is truly, truly impressive. And so I really commend Linda and staff because that's incredible. That's a lot more money than we've had ever in grants. So thank you very much.
I concur.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Some of it, Linda does a great job for us. Some of it that we're benefiting too is from timelines with excess funds through the feds and the state going to be launching additional road funds. So we are lining up for those applications, I can tell you now. And it's a possibility that if we are successful with some of the grant applications that we're working on now, we intend to have come to council for resolution, that we may be in a position where we have to open our budget next year. So that would be a good problem to have because it means more projects for the community, especially in the streets area where they are wanting to see more investment. And we are so reliant, as we've looked at past meetings, on grant funds to make those projects happen. We simply don't have the general fund for those projects. So we anticipate submitting a significant number of grant applications this fall, all of which aren't even included in this budget necessarily.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
And just to Kate's point, it's important to note, I know there's a lot of public perception when we have increases in our budget every year that it's a reflection on excessive spending and an impact on their tax dollars and how they're spent. But you've done a really good job, I think, in laying out exactly why we're seeing these increases. And a lot of it is due to significant grant funding and the change in the JPA structure. So I appreciate the explanation and I hope the public can appreciate it as well. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Moving on to our special revenue funds then. Our special revenue funds, I've got to look here instead of up there, sorry. Our special revenue funds, you will see in our detailed budget have decreased almost $1 million. This reflects the end of our local option tax revenue. So that's our 1% revenue that's been funding our War Memorial Field projects, and the associated expenses and completion of phase 2 of our War Memorial Field project. That was the completion of our improvements on the field, and then ultimately our parking lot and boat launch improvements. A reminder for council and the public that we still have yet another phase to War Memorial Field, which is included in the budget and is almost entirely grant funded, and that will be improved boat docks down there. That did not happen as part of this phase. It was another round of grant funding that Linda came through on. It's about $270,000 in grant funding for replacement of those boat docks and addition of new boat docks as our concept identifies down there. So that will be happening and will be completed for next year's boating season. So we're underway with that right now. A reminder also on our local option tax, a consideration for council, I think in probably the upcoming month or so, will be whether to consider another round of local option tax, possibly related to the parks capital improvements that were part of our parks master plan. We do rely on a revenue source in order to make those happen, and have been very successful in leveraging those dollars with grant dollars, to council's point, in order to make those projects happen. So those are not included in the budget, but we are still, we've talked about this over the last couple of years, and I continue to have to bring this before council and the public, because it's a real issue that we will be facing as a city moving forward. Under our current state statute, we lose our status as a resort city when census numbers reach 10,000. And so we're pretty anxiously waiting for the census numbers to come in here over the next month or two. And we believe we're going to be a hair under the 10,000. But if our projections are wrong, we lose our resort city tax. So as we think about the future and the ability to leverage tourist dollars through taxes like our resort city tax in particular, that's our bed tax at the hotels, which funds our public safety services primarily, as well as the 1% local option tax that we had. If voters have approved a tax and it's for a period of time, and our census numbers exceed the 10,000, that tax stays in place for those projects until the end of the voter approved timeline. If, however, we achieve that 10,000 population before that happens, we will not be able to do another hotel motel tax. We would not be able to do another 1% local option sales tax like what we've done. So that, in terms of a funding mechanism for us as a city to accomplish capital improvements and public safety needs that tourists bring into the community, will lose that ability to access those revenues.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could just add, I want to advocate for the local option tax. I think that the community as a whole should have a pat on their back for having the commitment to the local option tax. I'm certain it was a growing pain for the businesses to try to figure out, and the city to try to figure out how to collect those funds. But it was directed to a targeted project. It was collected correctly. It was on time and on budget. And then it sunsetted. That's what we're looking for, as far as, you know, us as a city and citizens to be able to help pay for things, as well as, and this is my kind of 2 cents with our travel and tourism, I'm fully prepared for the pay to play. Like, I love it that people are coming up here and they're enjoying our town. So I'll use this as an example. If you want to come into the house and wipe your feet, you don't have to pay for the carpet, but I'm going to charge you to clean it. And that's kind of what the direction this is going. I love having people coming up here. I love it that they're enjoying our town and then they get to come and go. But there's a lot of wear and tear on our shoulder seasons that our citizens should not bear the full burden of. So.
Thank you, Councilman.
So for clarity on that, on this too, and not that you've misled anyone, but for clarity for our budget, because I know it'll get picked up in the papers and things too. We have not included a local option tax in the budget as presented.
Right.
But I do anticipate we will be having discussions on that. So again, our budget has a decrease of almost $1 million, again, reflecting the loss of the local option tax. Should we take that up, council decide to put that on the ballot for voter consideration moving forward, if that was to come before voters this fall, for example, and voters, again, it would take a super majority. If that were to pass, we would be in the position of reopening our budget at some point next year to address that revenue that we have not accounted for in this budget presentation. The overall budget in the city's enterprise funds, so our enterprise funds really make up our water fund and our sewer fund. And again, the way to think about enterprise funds is those are businesses that operate within the city. Any revenues that come into those funds can only be used for those particular purposes. And we have rates that establish the revenues that come in. And then we also benefit from grants that we apply for that come into our enterprise funds as well. But predominantly it is ratepayers. So we are undertaking a rate study for our sewer system, wastewater system, and you'll be hearing about that getting underway here in the coming probably 4 to 6 weeks. And we anticipate having that completed by the end of the year. We will also be taking on our water rates as well. But our overall budget for our enterprise funds as presented includes approximately $2 million increase, which reflects kind of what you have heard tonight with Dan's presentation earlier. You have adopted a new water master plan. And in next year's budget, we have an increase of $500,000 reflecting water projects that are needed and identified in that recently adopted plan. In addition, we will be presenting to council about an additional $1.5 million for projects in our wastewater treatment fund. We've done our bridge improvements for our wastewater treatment plant. Moving into next fiscal year, we're into the first phase of design of a new wastewater treatment facility. So this is engineering and design expenses, and we're headed off on that way with a required timeline from DEQ to achieve a new wastewater treatment facility. I would note for council and the public that we are in conversations with Kootenai-Ponderay Sewer District about are there some opportunities for connection into our system as an option for them, as an option for us that could be beneficial to ratepayers on both sides. When you have a enterprise funds and you have a water system and when you have a wastewater system, the larger your pool of participants in those systems, the more you're spreading your costs. So it can have real benefits. And two, is we're looking, and I anticipate looking at state-of-the-art technologies, as we've discussed in our wastewater treatment system. It can really present some wonderful environmental opportunities too for Kootenai-Ponderay Sewer District and take advantage of that occurring in one area. Finally, I would note related to our enterprise funds that our revenues have increased coming into particularly our water fund as we are experiencing the amount of growth that we are in our region. And that's allowing us to move through with projects maybe more quickly than we would otherwise. A reminder that our water service area is far beyond our city limits. We are the water behind Sandpoint. We are the water behind city of Ponderay, city of Kootenai, and some of the unincorporated areas. So for residents in those areas who may be served by a water district, in some cases, we are some of the service. We are the commercial service, and the water district might be residential service. And behind that residential service, it's City of Sandpoint water, and including up into our ACI and into the City of Dover. We are the water behind the Syringa Water District as well. So when we're looking at water revenues coming in, growth in those areas, it's significantly impacting our water fund and our water distribution system as well. So any questions on enterprise funds?
No.
And finally, I guess I would note again, these increases, again, these are enterprise funds. So these increases don't have anything to do with property taxes. This is ratepayer dollars and grants that you're seeing in these two funds. Relative to our employees, I mentioned that we will be coming back with another proposed remodel project for our police area of our buildings. And it was about, I think about 18 months ago now that we took council on a tour of our police department, and you're able to see how desperately we really need a remodel in that area for overall functionality, efficiency, and safety for our police department. So we did include that in the budget this year. And I know the public does not get to see that area of our city hall often, whereas our customer service area is very visible. But as our council members, I think, can speak to very well, and the mayor, our police department's very much in need of a remodel, and also finalizing our HVAC improvements in that area with ducting for just overall health and quality of the working environment for our employees. Also for our employees, we have included in our budget a 2% market increase to attempt to keep us in line with benchmarking of regional agencies. We do that tracking every year. I would say with our market adjustment, we're on the low end of what we're seeing in adjustments across our region, but we also still have included our step increases, which is another part of our compensation program for employees. And most of our employees are still within a system where, based on meeting performance, they're able to get step increases. And that's nearly every employee across the city. So we balance the two, and we've had a lot of struggles and conversations around ensuring that we keep that balance between what is on our employee compensation side and our ability to do projects that the public wants as well. So it's always a difficult challenge as we're going through the budget, but we felt that this is where we can attempt again to keep up with the market, do right by our employees, and continue to remain with projects planned not only this year, but in years moving forward. Otherwise, relative to M&O, our expenses across our city divisions, excluding wages and benefits, as we just discussed, really are due to increases due to one-time projects, or are fairly flat and consistent with what we've seen with fiscal year, prior fiscal years. Again, just to note, several budgets have master plans and rate studies, as we've discussed, to be continued and finished during fiscal year 2022. In most of those cases, we're carrying over dollars that were budgeted for this year for those projects. In some cases, particularly our comp plan, we've included additional budget for our comp plan, as we expect to pick that up again next year, and that to be us to probably need to revet some things that we had done 18 months ago, because growth starts to change things, or what the public thought the comp plan is designed, what that would look like. It starts maybe looking a little bit differently and they want to revisit things. So we have budgeted for that. So getting into property taxes, because that's always something our citizens are interested in, and our council as well. The maximum allowed property tax that could be levied in our budget is just over 4.7 million, and that has been included in our proposed budget. And this is an increase of about $1.1 million over last year's levied amount. And we've got another graphic, and I'm gonna stop sharing on this and pull up the other screen because this is one of those things that it's easier to look at a graphic than us to put into a narrative. So let me get to, I think it's going to be this one right here. And I have Sarah's going to key in and help me. And this is out of your budget book that will be posted online. So you'll have an opportunity to look at this further as well when the budget book comes out. Here we go. All right, I'm going to hand it over to you to explain, and I will jump in if needed as well.
Typically, we showed the prior year actuals and the proposed. This year, I threw in the middle column there to indicate or to show what the actuals would have been without the one-time GPS GI one-time allocation that was given to us for the state. That was basically a tax reduction, a property tax relief reduction. If we participated in that, we elected to participate in that. And I felt it necessary to show that in here because without that, it was just skewed without that. So I hope this will help show what it really increased without that one-time property tax reduction. Other than that, just reading it, so I'll just look at the middle column and then the proposed 2022. Again, we are still waiting, just a caveat, we are waiting for the state. They just released their L2 forms with we'll get into this next too. Also, there was a major reduction House bill that went into, that was signed in that has a big effect on property taxes. And so our construction roll taxes line in there that has 63,581 is still in flux right now until we can get the final numbers for that. So that's just a caveat that might change a little bit or a lot depending on what the numbers come in at. The middle column and the proposed column there, you will see the $4.47 per 1,000 of taxable value. It went up to $4.70. And then down below, you'll see, and we'll talk about this next, is that our homeowner exemption actually went up from 100,000 to 125,000. So with that, it actually reduces it by 58.44. So there's a lot of different moving parts this year. And that's why these forms came out actually almost 2 months later than what they ever have. And it's also going to affect that 6380 or that new construction roll. And that's is still why it's in flux and why it's not completely done yet for this. Typically, it is done at this time. The only thing we're waiting for is the final construction roll numbers, which come in very close to the preliminary. So at our next meeting, I'm hoping that will all be done and ironed out, and we'll be able to present that for what it really is going to be.
So in summary, what you see with this is, again, on the left side, you're seeing our 2021 actual budget, and you are seeing the levy rate that we have in this current year, 2021. And a reminder that our city council chose to accept the one-time funding that was made available to jurisdictions through the state that was a one-time 1-year reduction of property tax. So when we are, that is where Sarah put in that second piece of the actual if we had been without that one time. So if we didn't have the one time last year, the middle column is what our this year, the middle column is what our scenario would be. With that additional homeowners exemption and taking our new construction rolls and adding those in, actually what we would have been at last year without that property tax reduction, our levy rate actually goes down this year and over what it would have been had we not taken that property tax reduction. With us having taken that, it results in an increase, but we've given you the comparison both ways. I'm going to switch us back to our other screen and talk about another topic that Sarah's mentioned, and we will be talking about a lot, not only this year, but in coming years. And you're going to see this in papers across the state. And we're hearing the county talking about this. We're hearing the county talk about this as well, because it is significantly affecting local jurisdictions in a negative way. This year, our legislature passed House Bill 389, which was ultimately signed by Governor Little on May 12th of this year. This is one of the most significant property tax bills to pass in Idaho's history, and it does have a significant negative effect on a city's ability to levy for future property tax revenue. And not only in terms of revenues we've been counting on, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but a balance that a local jurisdiction is always trying to make is do we have to take the amount, increase our tax levy by the 3% that we are allowed, which becomes necessary when you are not experiencing a significant amount of growth, when you are a jurisdiction like we are, that our growth rate has been essentially 1% per year. In order to keep up with inflation costs and inflation costs for personnel and inflation costs for purchasing things, that's where we get in the position of having to take the 3% in order for us to keep up with that compounding inflation. With that said, when you look around the state and where actually we were projecting we would be going as a city, it's when you start to see that significant growth with new construction, and I don't mean kind of where we are now. We're right now at the front end of the pipeline with projects coming through, and we've had presentations to the council about the fact that we've got 800 housing units that are moving through somewhere in our pipeline. We're not seeing them, we're starting to feel it, but they're kind of in the beginning of our pipeline. It's when actually occupancy permits are issued and people are getting ready to move into the residences. That's when we really start to see the impact on our construction rolls. So as we looked at earlier, our new construction rolls, what was our total amount for this year? Can you pull that up on?
It's about 13 million, I believe, this year.
No, the dollar amount of it.
63 million. I don't have it open.
The tax dollar amount. Can you look up at that? I can switch over to it, but it'll switch me off of this. And I can pull it back up. This might be easier. We're going to go back to what we were just looking at. That's going to be our new construction rolls and the taxes on that. Come on. Here we go. So when we go back and we look at our property tax chart, you can see, so this is new construction that's come onto our tax rolls. If you look under the allowable growth items, you look at here, you can see again, and when we go back historically, we're actually fairly consistent on this within $10,000 either way, but our new construction rolls coming on, we have estimated at just under $64,000. So when you're seeing significant growth, you'll see big jump in new construction rolls, and we get the total dollar value of our construction rolls. And for this year, it was
63,000.
total value of the new construction.
That was the 14 million. I got
13 or 14 million in value of new construction, which then translates into a new tax base for us, added on to our tax base of approximately $64,000. When we see, again, other cities, when you start looking to our south, you look at Rathdrum with the growth that they've been experiencing on the prairie, where they keep up with inflationary growth and impacts of that is with their new construction rolls. And with the, sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place. This is hard to talk and be consistent and get me back and forth. What you see as a result of this new legislation that was passed, that 63,500 that we are getting in new construction rolls, moving forward, we would get 90% of the new construction rolls. So our new construction rolls would go down. And so our ability to not take what is allowed for an increase in our property tax levy, there's a balance that you're doing with that and new construction rolls where you reach years of high growth where you, in order to keep up with inflation, you don't have to take that 3% because you can balance it on your new construction rolls. And that's what Bonner County has successfully been able to do for the last several years with the significant construction that they've had in Bonner County. And they're going to be facing the same thing. Their new construction rolls are now capped at not 100% of the value. It's now at 90% of the value. Similarly, for a jurisdiction like us, while we haven't had annexation conversations to date, we haven't had requests in recent years for annexations. We are filling in within our limits. And this is something, as we see growth happening, annexation might be an issue for us. And as municipalities are growing their boundaries and annexation, that too has been capped at 90% of that value for annexation. In addition, and this is going to be significant for us in Sandpoint, this will be significant for the city of Dover, our urban renewal districts. So our urban renewal, our north urban renewal, our downtown urban renewal, that is funding our downtown revitalization. North is funding our Great Northern Project. In 2029, when those urban renewals sunset, the tax increment for each of the jurisdictions within that district goes back to that jurisdiction. We've been counting on 100% of that appropriate tax increment for us coming back to us, and that would fund future capital projects for us moving forward. This legislation now cuts that to 80% of the urban renewal value. So that's a 20% cut to us in that grown tax increment in urban renewal. And this will be a significant issue for us in 2029 and moving forward. It will continue to provide us with the funding that we need for our projects within the urban renewal district, but it's when an urban renewal district sunsets and that growth in that tax increment goes back to the jurisdictions, we will all be feeling this cut. So that's us, it's the library districts, it is Bonner County, it's the fire districts, it's all who are taxing districts within that urban renewal area. They have also put a cap on total property tax increase. So if we take into consideration, we're capped at 90% of new construction value, we're capped at 90% of annexation value, we're capped at 80% of urban renewal district that may be sunsetting and coming back in. If all of that combined exceeds 8%, we're cut even further because we can't exceed that 8% cap in total with all of those things happening. We also, with foregone, so we, in years where we don't take our tax increment up to the max we're allowed to take, what happens is it drops in foregone. And we go into our foregone from time to time. We don't carry a big foregone balance. That's never been the philosophy of the city, is that foregone is a good place to be your savings account, because things can happen like this, where now you can get a cap on your foregone. So some jurisdictions around the state have kept larger balances in foregone, which is actually one of the reasons that this legislation passed. And if they had a big project, if they had a big emergency, they would tap their foregone in a future year. Well, they cannot take more than 1% for non-capital projects. There was no cap on that prior, and it is capped at 3% for capital projects. For us, we have always taken foregone for capital projects. We have not taken it for M&O, so non-capital types of expenses. We take them for more of our capital projects, equipment needs at the city. Again, as Sarah noted, the homeowner exemption has been increased from 100,000 to 125,000. And again, the preliminary levy rate calculations used for new construction and annexation budgets, that has increased. But overall, we have significant caps that we're going to be facing in the future on our revenues. So it's going to be challenging times, and that's where we're going to have to look at continuing to leverage outside dollars through grants, as we have successfully been doing, and perhaps looking at the pay-to-play and fees and those types of other ways to balance our budget, because our revenues, these are the kinds of things that impact our ability to provide the services that our citizens want and the capital projects that our citizens want. Any questions? With that, the recommendation with the mayor's approval after reviewing our budget is that council adopt the preliminary budget with our ceiling again as identified, and set a budget hearing for your August 18th city council meeting. In between that time, we will have a further budget workshop at your August 4th meeting. Our budget book will be posted before the end of the week this week, so you have an opportunity to review that in detail, as does the public, in advance of that budget workshop. And if necessary, that also leaves this room if council wants to discuss items in more detail. We could schedule a special meeting and have a second budget workshop before that August 18th meeting.
Okay. Any other questions from council? All right. Please note that public comment will not be taken this evening, but will be reserved for that public hearing that's scheduled, that will be scheduled for August 18th if this motion is approved. And given that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget and schedule the budget public hearing for August 18th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilman Spro,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilman Groot.
Yes.
Motion passes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the resolution for intent to use foregone levying authority. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? There'll be a roll call vote.
Councilman Groot,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilman Sprow.
Yes.
Motion passes. The final item on the agenda this evening is a review of city fees, and council will schedule a public hearing for proposed new fees and existing fees proposed to increase more than 5%. City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton will provide an overview of the fee changes. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You won't actually just have me. You're going to get our cast of leadership team up here on different topics because we're going to work our way through the fees here tonight. Overall, our fees as presented, and hopefully I can make this bigger for you all. Make it a little bit bigger. Not get us off the screen. Okay. Our overall fee schedule as presented, what we do with our fees on an annual basis and generally our fee schedule is we adjust it in accordance with the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Typically what we see with the CPI is an increase of it generally over the last decade or so has averaged about 1-2%, and we have a whole analysis of this in your budget book. And this year is an anomaly as we are all experiencing with inflation this year. The CPI is at 4.7% currently. And so our fee adjustments are in accordance with the 4.7% increase in the CPI. You will see it's not an across the board 4.7% because we got crazy numbers like 53 cents on different fees. And so what we did is we rounded up or down to the quarter cent. So some of them might go up as high as 5%. Others are you're going to see more like 4% or 4.3%. But it was a rounding to get to kind of a clean cent number. We did not round all the way to the dollar number because we had in cases then that would jump us over 5%, and we were trying to stay as close to that 4.7% as possible. So going through our fee schedule, any of our changes on this is our current fee schedule, and any changes that we have are highlighted in yellow in your packet and will be posted online in the yellow so the public can see those. All of the others, if you are not seeing red, if you are not seeing yellow, those are fees that are on our current fee schedule. So again, through this page, most of these fees, you're seeing adjustments here anywhere from the low 4% to 5%, which again is reflecting that 4.7% CPI. We do have one new fee on here, and that's highlighted in red. That's the dog tag replacement. So we have dog license fees, but apparently dogs are losing their license tags. So that's a replacement for those dog tags of $5.25. So that's a new fee. Otherwise, these are all adjustments of that rounded 4.7%. Our next round of fees, same thing. We've done some references to city code. You can see that over on the right under the peddler's registration where those are missing, and otherwise you're seeing the application again of the CPI. And Sarah, you're keeping me honest if I miss something here. And same thing on this page, again, you're seeing the CPI applied to these existing fees. And at the top, those are in our fiber fund. You will note on Parks Field usage, there's no changes to these fees. So on our parks, we had a lot of discussion this spring. You've just adopted a new fee schedule for our parks fields. And so we didn't make any adjustments. This was just adopted this spring. Rental of Jeff Jones Town Square, that wasn't a parks fee that was included in the fee adjustments this year. So you're seeing that with the CPI increase. Mortgage, you're seeing a CPI increase. And again, we've been consistent with that year over year with applying the CPI. Last year, our CPI was less than 1%. And so we actually didn't do an increase because it ended up changing mortgage fees by like 50 cents or something small. So we did not make that adjustment last year.
Jennifer, what's that item at the top of the page that doesn't have a label? The 3,600 something. 3,000, yeah.
Oh, it's cut off between pages. There you go.
Oh, I
Tour
see.
boat.
Okay.
And that actually, it's showing on our schedule as new. It's not new. We've always been charging for the tour boat, but it's never been on our fee schedule. And we have been working, as council members will recall, over the last couple of years. We've had things added on that are fees that were missed and are happening, and they need to be on our fee schedule as per Andy, correct? So the tour boat fee is on our fee schedule. And our fee schedule, just so the public is aware, in case you haven't seen it, our fee schedule is published on our website all year long. So there shouldn't be surprises as to what fees we have and what those fees are. The fee schedule's out there. So if, for example, we got another tour boat operator and wanted to do that, somebody's looking at that business, they could see our fee schedule and what they could expect to pay. So for parking citations, I'm going to call Chief Kuhn up, and he was reworking parking citations. And I wanted to give you 2 opportunities to show the tie.
Showed it off once. I just got readers, so
Oh,
I'm in the, if I wear them, you're blurry, which isn't bad. But then I can read this, so I poke myself in the eye. Forgive me.
I think your IQ just went up 50 points though.
My wife said I wasn't aware to wear them like this because it makes me look too old. So, but she's not watching, so it's okay. For everybody knows that we may or may not have a parking issue in Sandpoint. We haven't changed our fees in a few years. One of the issues that we faced a few years ago, and we actually increased some of our fees to the $50, is because we had a lot of people that basically just thumbed the nose at us when we were with park tickets. We're still seeing some of that behavior. So the increase of $50 hasn't curbed some of that. Believe it or not, it hasn't curbed it. $50 is not a big enough hit. So we went back and looked at our entire fee structure and what we're doing, from even our time to parking all the way to our concerns at the beach and some of our boat parking. And so if you look at the list, I'll slide my glass on. If you look at our list as you go down, we increased hopefully enough to be a little bit of a deterrent from even our first offense went from $10 up to $25. Second offense, third offense went up to that 50 to that 75. Parking facing the wrong way, we've left it at $10. We do see a lot of that in our city, more so in our residential area. It's not a huge priority for me right now to go out and enforce. We do hit the ones where they're on streets where they create hazards. And so I just didn't increase it. I left it alone unless the council wants to do something different there.
Corey, on that point, I've noticed a lot of cities allow that. So I appreciate the concession there, but
yeah, the residential area is not as concerning versus like, let's use Cedar Street for an example, where it's a busy street, even in our residential, this side of Fifth Avenue. If you park on the wrong side of the road, when you're pulling out into traffic first before you cross. And so there's that give and take of, is it a busy street? Is it not a busy street? Is it in a cul-de-sac in a residential area? So yeah, so there's some of that gray area that we're hoping we're using that discretion. So if we write a few tickets, hopefully it's $10 is more of that warning concept of be safe, pay attention to which side you park on. So.
Yeah, sorry. You and I have had conversation, and I would like to consider charging out of staters a lot more money at City Beach. At an event I went to, it was hardly any Sandpoint people parking there. And again, as you said, one person said she just bought herself a $50 parking space. So I think our citizens deserve that 7B should park for Sandpoint because we pay for it. But the out-of-staters, I think they should have to pay more.
So with that being said, I know that goes into a whole nother discussion. I know I've spoken with Jennifer. I know one of the issues that we're going to take up later this year is that concept in our strategic plan about how are we going to manage the beach? How are we going to force it? Is there a way that we can have, where locals get in for free? Can we encourage the out-of-staters or those outside of our county pay for that, for using it? It kind of goes back to what Councilman Gross said, you pay to play. If you come into the town, we love you, we want you to come. But so I think that's a discussion that we're planning to have later this year. That would be, I think it is a topic the entire community would love to hear. So
I agree.
I agree with you on that. So back to increased fees. Handicap stayed the same. Parking, we changed some terminology and we tried to clean some stuff up. So parking in violation of signage is we change in the title and we increase it to $100. This goes back to some of our boat parking. It's very clearly marked boat parking. People will park there anyways. The $50 fee doesn't stop them. I don't know if a $100 fee will or not, but it's going to go up to $100. We have people that will bypass the signs and park on our grass at the beach. Some of those get towed depending on where they're at. Some of them just get a fine. And so that's going to go up. So we changed the terminology so we can use it for what the sign says versus if you're parked outside of the designated lines. So that's still going to be in there as like all other parking offenses at the $50. And then you see that we cleaned up a bunch of red zones and hydrants and all that kind of stuff. It's just going to fall under that generic inappropriate parking. The other one that went up that you can see just by that 5% is the boat parking violation. If you remember, that's if someone parks in somebody's wrong slip, they have to be towed outside of it. They can be issued a violation for parking the wrong slip if they get towed. So, which we're not seeing a ton of that this year. We've got a couple, I think. I think that's all. Is there any questions? I think I hit all mine.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Talking to some businesses, employees on like First Avenue who have expressed some issues with the 2-hour parking. Is there any way to get like business passes where maybe they can get an extra hour or so? Is that a possibility? Or do you have anything to say to that?
That's one of the things when we passed some of the 2-hour parking that was debated. So some of the business owners, and I think it depends on which business owner you talk to. Some of those businesses owners on First Avenue want to see that spot flip every 2 hours because the more often it flips, the more customers they have. And so that's why we went to 2 hours on First and Cedar, because it's really our heaviest parked area, if that makes sense. And so to try to keep that turnover, if we jumped it to 3 or 4 hours, some of the businesses I think might frown. And I could I know Councilman McAllister's heading to that group. She could probably add her 2 cents into some of that too. So that's why we went with that 2 hours because of, and that's why we stuck with that First and that part of Cedar for that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and Ward Tolbom did a parking study, if you haven't read it, a number of years ago, but he calculated the cost of someone staying there longer than 2 hours and not flipping over the parking spaces, what the detriment to the businesses would be. And so I'll find that for you. And
Thank you.
Mhm.
If I recall correctly, part of that rationale was that we wanted to discourage the owners from parking their own cars on First, and then not allowing their customers to park there.
Right, yes.
We've had, yes, and that's been an issue too.
And toward that end too, Councilman, we are in the process of ordering a new parking study. And through that process, there will be a community engagement process, and it'll give the community another opportunity to really look at throughout our downtown core, as well as public areas like City Beach and others. Are we taking the right approach to parking and our fee structure, and how much time is free, what's not free, all of that will be considered with this new parking study. So that's something to look forward to, and I think it'll give us all an opportunity to make sure that we're doing the best we can with our parking resources.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Corey.
Mr. Mayor, I did have a question. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to wait till the end of you getting through everything and then go back and ask the questions about, or would you rather have them asked as we go through?
Well, if you want me to jump back, I can jump back.
Okay. Well, I did have, since we're sort of on this topic of pay to play, that, we don't really charge much significantly more for non-resident mortgage. And I know that there's been quite a waiting list, or at least that's what I've heard out there in the public. And that would kind of depend on residency and whatnot. And if we are going to have a discussion later on about non-residents coming in to use our facilities and stuff, and we have a lot of residents that are hoping and waiting to get a space because they're on a waiting list, and I think maybe we should consider how we're doing our mortgage fees as a part of that later discussion.
Okay.
Does that make sense where I'm going with that? And we might have to do something city, county, it would depend on where the discussions come from and what the public would want.
I agree.
Okay. Yes.
Thanks. And then I had one other question about the business permit as opposed to a business license. You pay your license, but then you have a business use fee. You also, I don't think it was new. It was in red, I believe, back there. It was back a couple pages.
That and business use permit. What page is it on?
Keep going.
Yeah.
It's right by the business license. You're right there. Oh, you passed it.
Sorry, I have my own. I do not have readers on tonight. so-
Okay.
Okay.
Corey, can you bring
You're
them
warm.
up?
You're warm. You're warm. Stop.
So you pay a business, I don't understand what the business use permit is, and it was in red, so you pay your business license and then you also have to, can you just explain what that fee is?
So in the past, it was called an occupancy permit. It's really more of, it is a fee not associated so much with occupancy, but it is an inspection that is triggered by a change of business use. And so staff.
Business, okay. Business, okay. Type, not necessarily the use of the business as in that definition of
Well,
the word
it's the
use, but
business use of the building.
correct.
Yes.
So type of business in the same building change.
Yes.
Okay.
So for example, a
Syntax
case
error.
would be, you might have maybe you have a space that's been used historically as a retail space. And now that space is being repurposed for a salon, and we've got chemicals in there and things like that. It requires a whole review of that, and it triggers an inspection with our building official at the least, sometimes fire too,
Right, okay.
relative to that change of business use. So
Mhm.
generally, you have a business, if it's the same type of business going into a space as the use before, you're paying a business license. You're going into a space and you're a new business, and it's a very different use that now triggers us going out and doing an inspection for health and safety of the public. Then you are the business license and you're paying for a business use permit.
Okay, yeah, so inspection fees, basically, yeah, so.
Yeah, or it could happen if your business is at one location, you move to another location, and it was a change of use in that new location. You don't necessarily need to get a new business license, which we used to require in the past, but we took that out of a couple of years ago. But you do need to get a business use permit.
Okay.
Uh-oh. No, it's still there. Sorry. Not on mine. All right, back in business.
Business, okay, and then,
Down
and I had
to-
one more question,
Okay.
stop there, was
Okay.
the, I just find it odd that bed, breakfast, and daycare operations and tourist home license are all the same category. It says tourist home license, and then it says dash bed and breakfast and daycare operations.
This falls under Amanda's area.
Well, that just seems like the most bizarre fee to me. Like, I can understand those all individually, but
A bizarre title.
how is daycare operations a tourist home license?
Great question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but I think Melissa's gonna make you come up here so you're on the mic. Sorry.
You get your steps in.
Didn't have her Fitbit on. It's not gonna matter.
Aw.
So great question, and frankly, I don't have an answer for it.
Okay, let's move on then.
Block, yes. My sense is that it's a historical carryover. We, in fact, don't refer to them as tourist home license anymore. What we have are short-term rentals. And so I too do not know why a daycare operation would be categorized in that. So I can get back to you with an answer.
Okay, so I guess maybe next time we do fees, we can
Yeah,
clean
when
that
this-
category up a little.
I would say when this comes back for public hearing as part of our staff presentation, we can get an explanation on this. And since it's not a new fee, this
Right.
is a carryover, we could probably suggest different language,
Mhm. Yeah.
and council could do that.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fee.
Okay, note to revisit this category. This is why we need to go through these things.
Sorry for being that person.
No, that's great. Yep. Good catch.
Okay. Anything else, Councilwoman?
Let me see
before
if I
get
made
back to
another note.
Parking,
Very
stop
interesting.
at parking, because then I'll work my way down.
There was a moorage fee for invasive species, moorage local invasive species fee. We charge that as a part of them mooring.
That's correct.
So it's just kind of rolled in there. Okay.
Yes,
Um,
that's because we do a lot of invasive species work right there at the docks.
Mhm.
So the users pay a portion of the invasive species
Mhm.
related to the docks.
Right, and then also picnic and shelter fees, it doesn't seem like we charge much for non-residents in that category too. So that's, would be something else that I would like to see revisited when we have the meeting about.
Picnic shelter.
Yes, so really mostly all parts of our park facilities and stuff, if it's not, I just saw lots of park shelter usage this summer. I think everybody did. And that might be something that the locals are getting pushed out of because so many people are coming here to do that, to have their own grandma's birthday or whatever it might be.
So our planning on park systems. So yes, parking in our parks. We can revisit moorage. We can revisit the shelters and things. So the planning on parks was really moving in, and as we get moving forward with further parks planning and development and our capital projects and vetting those through and costs, really taking that comprehensive look and coming back to council.
Okay.
Okay. Amanda, I'm going to have you come back up on food truck CUP. That was. And HVAC permits. So the rest, again, up until that point, were really again, some cleanup of language, but otherwise we're at that CPI increase with the exception of the food truck CUP and your HVAC.
Perfect, thank you. So with our updates from last year, we simplified our planning and zoning application fees. Most of them now fit within two categories, minor and major. Minor being, are we going to one body for approval, or is it a staff level type of decision? Versus is it two levels of decision making, meaning it needs to go to planning and zoning and it needs to come to city council. So looking at it in that regard. What we're finding is that because our current code requires a conditional use permit for food trucks, we're seeing an increase in food trucks and more are applying. The fee structure for a conditional use permit at the $720 being a minor application, because it has to go to planning and zoning, frankly is a bit excessive for the level of review and work that goes into a CUP. It's not quite the same as, say, a 15,000 square foot development that has multiple layers of review to it. So we're trying to recognize that and reduce the fee to something that's a little bit more manageable and hopefully more cost effective for a small business like a food truck. Any questions on that before I move?
Great
to HVAC?
catch.
As far as our HVAC fees, Christine Pullman, our building official, reviewed recently and assessed some proposed updates, I apologize, to the mechanical fee structure. Since last year, the state has completely overhauled the residential component of their HVAC fees. There are no changes being proposed related to commercial fees, but when it comes to residential, really the state's intent, and we concur, is to again simplify and to really align it better with the amount of time that's being spent to actually perform the review, as well as the inspections that are required with it. So overall, it is primarily a reduction in the base fees, with the exception of if you're an existing resident, have an existing residence, that there is a minor fee increase for the base fee, as well as per appliance. So that would be that change.
I think that's what I recall as the changes on building fee valuation.
Just
That
a
was
CPI change.
okay.
And the HVAC is for new homes where it has to all be inspected for safety, is that correct?
Great question. It's for both. So for example, if you have a furnace replaced in your home, even though it's an existing home, you have to pull a building permit, specifically an HVAC permit, to be able to do that replacement, because it's typically done by an HVAC contractor, connecting the gas line, for example.
Okay, and are you gonna know that as a homeowner, or is the HVAC guy gonna know that?
Yeah,
'Cause
usually you
that's-
hire a contractor that's going to be installing that for you, we hope. And yes, the local contractors that we have are well aware of their.
They're aware of the fees and
Yes.
other things like that. Okay.
Yes.
I believe the rest were the CPI.
All the way down until the garbage.
Until we get to garbage.
The extra cans, rollouts. So the extra cans, rollouts, and contamination charge, those are actual charges that we get if somebody has an extra thing that they put out in the street. So that's just straight pass through that the city is charged, and we just pass directly on to the customer.
So that's in this area where we've exceeded
Exceeded the 5%.
the 5%. These are not staff calculated fees. These are pass-through fees.
Yes.
We pass them on, or we somehow come up and pay them. That's it on fees. So with fees, again, we'll have this published so the public has an opportunity to look at it. This really is our presentation to council on fees. Unlike budget, we'll have a budget workshop, but we would request that council set a public hearing for consideration of the new fee schedule the August 18th council meeting.
Great. Any final questions?
So just to clarify, August 4th will be the budget workshop, and then if there needs to be additional workshops, it would be the following Wednesday.
That would be right. Council would need to schedule a special meeting.
And then what's the date to vote again? That would be the August 18th.
Yes. That would be for both budget as well as fees. And both would be a public hearing.
The 18th will be the public hearing.
Yes.
Thank you.
So again, public comment will not be taken this evening, but will be reserved for the public hearing that will be scheduled for August 18th, pending approval through this vote. So I would entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for August 18th, 2021 to take public testimony regarding proposed new fees and existing fees proposed to increase more than 5%. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor, before we vote, I just want to thank the public for those who stuck around the whole meeting. It's really cool to see you guys do that. Thank you.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Sprow,
Yes.
Councilman Groot,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rule,
Yes.
Councilwoman McAllister.
Yes.
Motion passes and this meeting is adjourned at 7:26.